We are continuing our review of this interesting book, Case Interview Secrets by Victor Cheng, who was a former McKinsey interviewer and also superstar. He shares 4 tools that consultants use to solve problems, which are the hypothesis, issue tree or framework, drill down analysis, and synthesis. And what I'm going to do in this video is try to share my understanding of each of these tools in a bid to helping you in your next case interview. The first one is the hypothesis, and if you've done a bit of science or if you have just gone through high school or college, you probably have heard the word hypothesis, which is a way scientists use to test an idea to know what is true or what is not true. So initially, the scientist, or in this case, the consultant, makes a statement and says, for example, all apples are red. Now that's an hypothesis. He thinks that all apples are red, but he then has to go ahead to test it. So you can think of an hypothesis as an initial guess based on what you observe. And then you have to test it to verify that it holds true in at least the majority of situations. So after forming your hypothesis, you then need to construct an experiment to test your idea, and then finally conclude if it is true or not. Victor gives the example of the phrase double-blind study, which is used in pharmaceutical industries to test the effects of drugs. And most of the time, what they do is that when they've developed a drug, they also have a placebo, which is also a drug, but is maybe it has no medicinal properties. So maybe it's just a syringe filled with water or some sort of vitamin, which is not relevant to the disease being treated. And then they split their users into 2. Those who have the actual drug and those who have the placebo. Now, if there is a significant change between those who use the actual drug and those who used the fake drug, then the scientists can conclude that the drug works in curing that ailment or disease. So that's called the double-blind study. So there are 3 steps that are important in the hypothesis, or in this, using this tool: the hypothesis, the experiment, and the conclusion. They're all part of the hypothesis toolbox that a consultant uses. And like I said before, for an hypothesis, you must be able to prove that what you have said holds true, otherwise it doesn't. Let's take an example. So an interviewer says, company ABC's profit is down 20%. And how the candidate solves that problem or responds to that is to say, I'm going to hypothesize based on some background information that the client's industry is in a price war, which has caused the client's sales and profits to decline. To test this hypothesis, I need to know the components of profits that have changed since last year. In particular, I need to know how sales and expenses have changed since last year. So this is the candidate responding to the hypothesis that this is the candidate forming an hypothesis about why company ABC's profit is down 20%. So the interviewer responds and says, sales have remained unchanged and costs have increased by 20%, which essentially says that the candidate's initial hypothesis that there has been there's been change in the components of profits, or that there's a price war. That hypothesis does not hold, because now the interviewer is providing new information that sales have remained unchanged. And then the candidate says, my conclusion is that my initial hypothesis seems to have been proven false. It looks like the client is facing a cost problem more so than a revenue problem. My next hypothesis is, and then he goes on to say something else that he believes, based on what he has now found out from the interviewer, would be the reason why company ABC's profit is down 20%. So an important thing to keep in mind when working with the hypothesis is that it's an iterative process. So it's not you giving an hypothesis and that's it. You have to test it out to make sure that it holds true in that situation or in many other situations, which goes to show that an hypothesis is not simply an opinion. Clients already have plenty of opinions. So an hypothesis, for it to be valuable, has to be an opinion that can be backed by proofs. So that's the first toolbox.